Hey guys, it's Jamie and welcome back to my channel. Today I am building a library for today's speed build. As you probably assumed or saw from the title, it is another Victorian build. However, today I will not be lecturing at you about Victorian facts. Shocker, I know. Rather, today I want to talk to you about libraries. So, as many people who know me personally know, I love reading and I love books. I love libraries. I love learning, really. In college, I was a double major specifically because I loved learning and felt like I could never learn enough. So when I decided I was going to build a library, because originally I had one downloaded from the gallery, but when I decided I was going to go out and make a SimSave file, I realized, okay, I really want this file to be filled with my own builds and maybe a few EA builds that I don't hate. So when I was going to this library, I decided I want to talk to you about libraries instead. So I did a little research, some very rough, simple research, nothing groundbreaking. I don't have a 20-page thesis for you, but I do have some stuff I really want to share with you that I thought was super interesting. So to begin with, what I learned was in the very, very earliest periods, there really was no distinction between like an archive or record room and a library. And because of this, there's actually like a lot of debate on when the first libraries were constructed and were built. So, and I think that's interesting because for me, I don't really see a huge difference between like having archives and bookkeeping and libraries. But the more I read, the more I was like, okay, this is actually an interesting dilemma, if you want to call it a dilemma. So, as we know, the earliest library or archive that we know of comes from the 3rd millennium BCE. And it was a Babylonian library. And it's just kind of filled with, it's like this room filled with tablets, clay tablets, and I believe even maybe a few rock tablets. And from what I understand, a lot of early tablets from this in the 2nd millennium are really just about wars, just kind of information about wars that were going on. There were names of rulers, as well as there were just general government and a few history stuff. And I thought that was really interesting. But once again, I was kind of questioning, like, but why is that debated as a library or not? And the reason for this is, so fast forward that now to ancient Greece, and in the early stages of ancient Greece, the Greek people, they did not see a difference between libraries and archives until the 4th century BCE, and that's when institutions were being erected solely for bookkeeping. And this is when it kind of changes from archiving into just libraries, is what I kind of understand. I don't fully grasp it, but also this isn't something I really researched that deep into. But I thought it was really interesting because, before the 4th century, it was very common for temples, ancient Greek temples, to have libraries in them, or collections of books, should I say. As we know, the Greek tragedy writer, whose name I am oddly blanking on right now. Am I a historian or what? Euripides. Euripides, we know he was a collector of books. Of course, so books as they knew them are not books as we know them now. Just kind of keep that in mind too. He's not collecting, a bound piece of work quite yet. And that's something I just thought was really interesting, is that there was this precedent already set of collecting and keeping books in writing and like manuscripts. But it really isn't until the 4th century that in Greece, there's the Greek people are saying that there's a difference between archiving and keeping archival records versus a library. I just thought that was super interesting, and it got me thinking, because when I first read that there were debates on whether or not archives and whether archives and libraries were the same or different. I was like, no, they're like kind of the same thing. But then I started thinking, that's very modern, I guess. The library in my hometown, had record keeping. Not just anyone, however, you couldn't just go in and be like, hey, I'm gonna borrow these really old records we have on our early town settlements, stuff like. No, you couldn't do that. But they did have these old records, and they did also, have books that people rented and offered everything else the library offers, from events to movies, so. And it's really interesting to me also how libraries have evolved and changed over time. Generally still kind of the same thing, an institution dedicated solely to, education and spreading knowledge. But, they're no longer, it's no longer this kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess, libraries in the ancient world were very, I don't want to say private, but they were for a specific class. They were for educated people. They were not for the common people. And that's just the sad truth. Now, however, libraries, especially libraries in, I would say, from what I've witnessed here in the United States, I can't really speak for the rest of the world, though, there's an emphasis on trying to make everyone from all walks of life feel accommodated, feel welcome. It's no longer just for scholars or people who want to learn. That's not to say that there aren't still libraries that are exclusive like that. There are many libraries that I know of that, like even there's some pretty exclusive ones that, just about anyone can get access to, but you still need to have the right access. Again, like one thing I'm thinking of, there's at Harvard University in Cambridge, Massachusetts, there's a library filled with that has a section, I believe, just dedicated to comic books. And just about anyone can apply for a card to that library in that archive. However, you have to know how to do it, which seems like a no-brainer, but also that is such an interesting way how it's still exclusive in a way that you have to know that it's there. You have to know how to go to the right building to get access to it, and then on top of that, it's I believe it's only between like certain hours, and someone has to be there with you, because of course this is a very I don't say prestige, but it's a very in-depth comic collection, and that's why it's so important, really, if I'm going to be honest. But also, it's not just Harvard. It's not just places like that. There's plenty of places where to use the library or to have access to a library, you need to, just, while there are still public libraries and libraries that are dedicated to public knowledge, there are still libraries out there that hold knowledge that the public libraries do not have access to. And not just anyone, can waltz into those libraries and, read or pick up a book. Which, I've met some people who say, that's how it should be. And I go back and forth. Like, I understand the argument for it, but I am of the belief that, all knowledge should be public knowledge. I'm not interested in keeping up I feel like academia, and I say this as someone who is an academic and loves to learn, but I've always felt like academia really tries its hardest to remain exclusive. And I know some people might disagree with that, but it's, academia really is in learning, really seems to be often marketed towards people with the money people who can take time out from working to go to school. And I say this as someone who, I worked all through college. I had 2 jobs, and I commuted. So, it's not like I made it work and I didn't come from money. It's possible to not come from money and make it, but the entire time, it often felt like it was, built around and built for people with money. And mind you, I went to a publicly funded institution. I didn't go to a private school. I went to a public school because it was supposed, because it's supposed to be more, it's supposed to be aimed at people who are lower income in some ways, but also, I think it's so funny too because I went to school in Boston. A lot of our adjunct professors taught at some of the more prestige colleges. Like, there were plenty of design teachers who worked at RISD down in Rhode Island. So the joke we used to make is, oh, you're getting a RISD education at like a fraction of the price. So, and the same can be said for, I had a science teacher who worked at Harvard. She was an adjunct professor at Harvard, and she taught us the same course that she taught her Harvard students. And we were most definitely not at Harvard. It's funny to me because we make a big deal out of, we tell people you need to be educated, but then we don't make it accessible. And I'm not even one of those people who thinks everyone needs to go to college. Not everyone needs a degree. But, as someone who has a degree and is in that field and in that world, I think it could be better. It could be more accessible. But anyways, this rant about libraries turned into my critique of education in America. So I think I'm going to cut it out here, but thanks for watching and hope I'll see you next time. Remember, all of my videos, all the builds in my videos, are for download off of the Sims gallery. Plus, I have other ones on there that are not, that have not been filmed because sometimes I forget to film. Or a lot of them were also filmed before I decided to make this channel. But yeah, thank you so much and see you next time.